First of all, thank you, Mr. Avinash, for joining us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on this platform. Marshall, same here. I think today's topic is very interesting for our discussion. One is, blueprinting the future proof of banking. I think 2 years back, if you think, we was hit by sort of a tsunami, by pandemic, right? And when the pandemic happened, actually, guys, most of the organization transformed. That was sort of taking a turn on the corner, okay? Resiliency was sort of the word of the transformation. How do we become more resilient? By workforce, by talent, by people, by process, by digitization, etc. After the pandemic, and we are now in the endemic, I think there's another turn, that because we are not going back to the 2019 as normalcy, we have created a new normal. And this turn is actually taking its place as we speak today. And this is again a big churn, big transformation in the organizations I'm seeing today. This churn is basically to be relevant to the future. We don't know the future, but I think we should fairly assume what's the nature of the future looks like. And this would mean that after 2.5 years and now in endemic, organizations are again going through a full-fledged transformation. The way the customer playbook has changed, the way the organization playbook has to change, and the way they address the needs and expectations and experience of the customers is completely changed. I would, build on this going forward. Some statistics for us. 76% of banks worldwide expect customer adoption in open banking to increase by 50%. Probably in 3 to 5 years. Another statistic which talks about by report between 2021 and 27, 40% of the business of digital savvy banks would be through embedded finance model, which means banking will become truly ubiquitous. It's like an electricity which is flowing through in a B2B environment or a B2C environment. It is, nobody would be concerned about really talking about the face of the bank. They would be more concerned about the value of the banking they will get out of it. Today, people are expecting much more beyond that, more sophistication there. And this sort of change expectations of the customer is kind of bringing to us at a fracture point, I would call it. Okay, banks have more technology choices to make. Avinash, every day, you would be receiving probably numerous choices to make as to how to go forward, right? Somebody is talking about containerization. Somebody is saying, let's take the complete bank to the cloud. Somebody will come to you and say that let's talk about automation. Somebody will say, AI and ML would give you more. There's numerous choices would come to you. And your plethora of value to be added to the bank, but which one to go after, how to go after. And I think question everybody is asking today is, what's the blueprint look like? Avinash, I want to start with you. I would call it 2021 is a year of open banking, right? Largely we are looking at, organizations are becoming more digital, intelligent and connected. It will continue to thrive with aspect support from government and the market. Governments have also supported it, right? What for you is the trigger in the trend? What are these trends which you are seeing in the market?
So, Saral, I think you are spot on about it. Open banking is not truly global, as we say it, right? I mean, and the way we look at it, right? I mean, there are two primary drivers for the entire open banking thing. The first, as you mentioned, I mean, is the entire regulatory initiative which is towards driving of competition. And I think over here, be it the regulatory initiative, or you basically look at it from a India stack perspective, right? I think these have completely revolutionized the ecosystem as far as the country is concerned. I think a combination of Aadhaar, a combination of the entire payment stack, be it UPI, AEPS, IMPS, stuff like things like Jan Dhan, GST, and this is just scratching off the surface. I mean, if we speak about it, there is this entire initiative about the OCEN which is around the lending enablement framework, etc. So the way the government railroads are currently being led, right? I think open banking is only going to explode in the days to come. The other important driver, of course, for this entire thing is, the entire thing around technology. And I think the last 2 years has only sort of, pushed the digitization across all industries, right? The emergence of APIs, the real-time payments, the expectation from the consumer, which is in terms of demanding more accessibility, more speed, convenience in terms of payments, right? So more than ever now, as banks, we need to meet the increasing demand for online, mobile solutions, right? And the way we look at it, open banking is, the primarily vehicle to sort of, deliver the same. So if you were to extend on this particular analogy and look at, what the neobanks are doing or what the big techs are doing, like, the Googles of the world, the Flipkarts of the world, etc., right? I mean, all these guys, as they try to penetrate in the Indian financial market, I mean, the way they're actually going about it is, using more and more of appification. So the way we look at it from a consumer standpoint, there is absolutely no other way for us to be there where the consumer is. I mean, we will have to embrace open banking. We have, as a bank, embraced it also fairly extensively. I mean, we are there in not only in the partnership models. I mean, we are there in terms of what we consume from the government. We have our own developer portal, right, where we have sort of deployed a huge number of retail and corporate APIs for the purpose of both partnerships and also for the purpose of some of these newer firms who would like to sort of engage with us. So as far as we are concerned, I think it is very, very exciting. This is the way to go, and the future is only going to become a lot more accessible thanks to the flood of APIs which is out there in the market now.
True. Thank you, Avinash. I think your starting perspective gives us the confidence that it's the trend which is globally there, and we as banking community in India is not only competing with Indian standards perspective, but we're competing now with the global standards, which
Absolutely.
is a
absolutely. I mean, you think about it, right? I mean, we have the PSD2 in Europe, right? In United Kingdom, we have the open banking regulations which were sort of introduced. And if you think about Australia, Brazil, UAE, I mean, these are all now progressing with their own open banking regulations.
True.
So while there's no global API standard, I think there is at least a unification in terms of thought that, okay, I mean, open banking is here to stay. I mean, appification is here to stay.
Perfect. Very quickly, Marshal, on to you. Thank you very much for joining. And it's again an honor and a pleasure to have you today. As Red Hat and leading the country today, Marshal, yourself, I'm sure you're servicing the global clients as well. Is it something new you're seeing, or you kind of second the thought which Avinash has brought in on the board?
Thanks, Shalil, for having me. And it's great to be with you, Avinash. What you are talking about is future proofing, right? And who knows what future holds. But you can have the building blocks so that you can future proof. You also spoke about, the pandemic, and now, what do we do next? So first thing first is, I think, Indian banking sector and generally the ecosystem work very well. In spite of everything changed, but things worked. And that is, huge, acknowledgement of the work that has happened over the years. The second part is the ecosystem that Avinash spoke about, which is JAM, okay? Janadhan, Aadhaar, mobile, the India stack, and now going forward, 5G. So I think the ecosystem is right. And the only way forward, in my opinion, is, being open and open banking is there. So I think the way I see it is banks are as much as technology companies as they are bank, and technology is at the front and center. There's a tremendous amount of progress which has happened in last 2 years. Digital transformation was always being talked about. There were elements of it, but the acceleration that happened was phenomenal. I think just to talk about how we work with various banks with Avinash. I mean, he actually took a big initiative of transforming omnichannels, right? It is basically about how to scale in a secure way. How do you make customer experience better and connecting multiple channel? So today, if I really look at front office, mid office, back office, those boundaries are getting tightly integrated. In some way, they are collapsing. In front office, technology is helping the bank staff to enable them better. The branch is becoming a sales office. They are equipped, besides fulfilling transaction, to also do cross sell upsell. If you go to mid office, there's a lot of regulatory workload that is coming. Okay, so they are also enabled. And in back office again, there's a huge transformation, eliminating human errors, automation, and the technology is really at the forefront of all it. So I think there's a huge opportunity. And for that, in my opinion, what most of the banks are doing with open banking, they're actually becoming like a fintech. They're really becoming a software factory. They're building a delivery supply chain. And they're using technologies like cloud, AI, building modern applications, using Kubernetes containers and automation. That's where I see opportunity.
Thank you, Marshall. I think very valid point. But like any opportunity, there are pros and cons of that, right? So while we are taking this turn, what is also happening is it's also creating a level playing field for most of the organization. I think level playing field also mean that organizations need to rely more on technology, which is advanced technologies, to serve the customer experiences. And sometimes go beyond the customer experiences, right? I think that's the change we are going through. So the con is the level playing field, right? It doesn't really matter as we need to, I call it very nicely, we need to race to the leadership, right? And this race to the leadership is quite different from, just not from a revenue perspective or a net income perspective or a net interest income perspective from a banking side. But it's more to do with how loyal the customers are with me, what kind of banking they're doing with me, are their experience in the journeys are okay or not. And that's where I find fintechs are growing tremendously, and they're creating a sort of an ecosystem where either we complement them or we compete with them. Something has to happen. This will portray a lot of challenges, Avinash. I'm coming to you, in fact. So one is the intersection of the new age technologies, artificial intelligence, servicing the one customer, one by one. Humanly, it's not possible. So I'm sure you would agree that there is a technology which we need to build on, the blueprint we need to create on to move forward. But that is also the case where the problems and challenges will appear. So if I am a CIO of a bank and if I come to you and says, Avinash, please help me, guide me, how do I look at this, my strategy? I think what are the areas I should be looking at it? What are the 3-4 principles I should be looking at?
So, there's a very wide question that you have asked. So, see, there are 3 or 4 things strategically that every CIO will have to sort of, keep his eyes on. Okay. First things first is, the evolution of technology itself. Where are we heading towards? So, as somebody who has been very intimately associated with, the technology side of banking, about a decade back, right? I mean, you used to have, these point solutions which were sort of taking care of virtually all your demands, right? I mean, so you could be having a core banking which takes care of your deposits, it takes care of your end of day GLs. Some banks also used to invest separately in a loan origination and a loan management systems, right? I think the days of having point solutions are now all gone. It's very important nowadays to take a step back and sort of focus in terms of architecture. And the way to look at architecture is the fact that you are going to have one layer of which is sort of interacting with the customers. There is going to be a decision layer in between. There is going to be a layer which is sort of supporting all these integrations. It could be integrations done within. It could be integrations done with the API stacks that I just mentioned on the government side or on the regulatory side. And below, there is going to be, the platform ecosystem, which is going to be more like a repository.
True.
This has to be the going in architecture for anything that you end up doing, because especially in the Indian context, right? I mean, for larger institutions, and if you've got to grow, you have to deal with volumes also. So unless and until your architecture is something, which is highly composable, highly, scalable, it is going to be very difficult for us to, do any kind of a mid-course correction. Second is, let's look at the entire geopolitical situation around us. And my response could probably change, a couple of years down the line. But as I see it right now, we have to make some certain significant choices in terms of what do we want to do on-prem and what is it that we want to do on cloud. Okay. And this is not an easy choice to make, because cloud can be expensive from an Indian perspective. Okay. I mean, I'm sure from a global perspective, it must be very, very cheap. But from an Indian perspective, I mean, yes, you end up sort of,
it's a dollar and rupee differentiation. That's the differentiation.
Absolutely. So you got to make those choices. But what is also equally important over here is that the supply chain constraints are out there. So our ability to sort of, increase, grow and do it on time basis the targets, projects, etc. that we essentially have can become jeopardized, because a lot of these are not in your control anymore. Right?
True.
So a hybrid is definitely on for even large banks, where, there could be an on-prem investment. There is going to be something off-prem, which is going to be there. And lastly is around the entire model, especially for banks in India, right? I mean, the way to think about it is, we used to have large sales force in banks. We used to have fairly large operational workforce in banks, right? And they used to be complemented, supplemented by, teams doing governance, teams in IT, etc.
Yeah.
I think this model has to change. And this will change over the next 4-5 years dramatically.
No doubt.
If we have to compete with the fintechs, if we have to compete and, look like, say, the JP Morgans of the world, or, the HSBCs or INGs of the world, right? If we have to truly embrace agile, where there are self-sufficient pods. So effectively, what it means is that investment in technology or technology-related functions, not directly technology, even technology-related functions, right? Like InfoSec, analytics, product ownerships, etc., is got to increase disproportionately.
Yeah.
Because all those items which have worked for us for the last so many years are now, getting consigned to the traditional ecosystem, the traditional architecture. The new age does not actually operate in that particular model at all.
True.
Okay. So the way I see it is that it will slowly begin with, the percentages of in banks in terms of people who are sort of working on technology or technology elite items is going to sort of, increase. In the Indian segment, I think it is abysmally low. It has to go up 5%, 10% in large banks like JP, etc. I believe it is, in excess of 40. We've got a long way to reach there. But these three things are bound to happen. And when the third happens, automatically you will see, the adoption of AI, ML, etc. will actually increase and start making a difference on the shop floors.
No doubt.
Today, a lot of it is actually coming as form of, consulting, some kind of assignment, some kind of, task-related projects that is actually getting executed. But if you really want to do an automation of a shop floor, where AI sort of takes over, ends up reducing items to the extent possible, which actually pushes technology to its brink.
Sure.
For that to happen, I mean, there has to be appreciation on both sides, from the taker as well as the giver. I mean, so that is one gap which I think is going to change dramatically. And these are the three items that I would sort of, focus on greatly.
Avinash, I think, thank you very much. It's, frankly speaking, it decodes the sort of a blueprint for a transformation for the bank, right? But it's also full of challenges, it's full of complexities and so. Marshal, I'm coming to you. What I understand from Avinash is that banks are not going to be banks, they are going to be a software house.
Yes.
Okay. And these softwares could be 40 years old as well, which is core banking. You need, and then latest softwares which could be on a hybrid environment sitting on a cloud, on a public cloud environment, right? As he said, there is only way which is look at hybrid. There are regulations, there is a country, nationalistic, protectionistic, I don't know, so many words floating around. Okay. But this complex environment would create challenges for people like you as a tech providers to cater to that and service them, right? I call it banks are decomposing. They have to decompose themselves. They have to go modular themselves. They will open APIs. They have to build customer experience. Now, at the one end, the complexity is so vast. On the other end, the fact is that the customers are experiencing that my cost of service should go down. My efficiency should go up, right? I think, both ways are divergent ways. How do we converge these two?
Like you said, and like Avinash said, the unique challenge in India is number of transactions that you need to do. And you also need to keep the cost of transaction low, right? So huge scale, I think we must be opening number of accounts per day larger than population of some of the small, nations. Look at UPI transactions. So on one hand, the transactions are huge. The cost has to be low, so it has to be efficient, right? That's the second thing. The other part is supply chain issues that Avinash spoke about. The talent issues in terms of both attraction and retention. That's a huge issue. So how does a bank become a technology company? And now, how does a bank take advantage of technologies which are available like, cloud, AI, ML, blockchain, modernizing the application, open APIs, all that stuff. So that's like you said earlier, every day Avinash has to make some decision. What's the priority for him? And what is that? He has to keep the planes flying. So the legacy technology is not going to go away, right? I mean, you are not currently going to get rid of your core banking. But how are you going to disaggregate it? How do you do this transformation from edge to core? And a lot of work has happened in a customer experience area. And now it is actually moving to core if you really want to take advantage. So I think architecture is the most important thing, in my opinion. You have to build a modern architecture. The legacy systems, the way they were built, nothing is wrong. What was available then was used, right? And banks use technology to a large extent. So core banking was monolithic. So and that's how it was done, or ERP or whatever, right? But now there are options available. And I think the pace of business is now related to pace of technology, and how soon and how efficiently you can change the technology to make a business differentiation. You spoke about technology is a level playing field. At the same time, you have to innovate and differentiate. How do you do that? So it is a very complex, but I think one thing, if you go to any client or any event and ask them how many of you are using cloud, few years back, few hands will go. Today you don't ask that question. You ask them how many flavors of cloud do you use, right? So people start from bare metal to on-premises to virtual private to public to the entire work. And I think Avinash makes a choice every day based on workload, what he wants to keep where. And he needs to have that flexibility to move his data and apps and workloads, move back and forth. Okay, he has to look at the cost aspect. He has to look at, based on workload, like you could have AIML workload, you will have data spread across public clouds as well, right? So that's a difficult choice, and that's a relevant choice. So in my opinion, and also the application of it, right? For example, you spoke about AI, ML, right? AI is actually getting embedded. So I think where we are playing is we are playing from edge to core. There are many banking application, right? I mean, some of our customers are now trying to modernize and containerize core. UPI, channels, all form of channels. The old has to coexist with the new. So middleware, APIs, and automation. Automation is again a huge thing. I think the talent has to move away to high value, where banks is a value, to closer to the business, and more mundane tasks should be automated. So our platform of OpenShift, it's an application platform, gives you a flexibility to move across cloud. It's a freedom and choice that you have. So that's one. Automation with Ansible, and the intelligent infrastructure. Okay. So what we are doing is, Indian banks are largely packaged application. There are no large developer teams, bespoke develop, but now banks are trying to do that as well by disaggregating. So we are working with the bank. The real benefit comes to when you build a cloud native application, right? And that gives you a real flexibility. You also, break the walls between operations and dev and DevSecOps. How do you make developer build application once and it can run anywhere? So those are the areas where we are working, but specifically UPI is a big play. Channel transformation is a big play. Automation, core, and so it's exactly right from core. And all the technologies that you spoke about, cloud, Kubernetes, automation, APIs, we play into it. We are the enterprise software company with open source delivery model, and open source actually working with community fosters a lot of innovation.
Sure. Well, Marshal, I think fair to say, open innovation has been there for the benefit of the society. I think it's not, innovation was very restricted. It was competitive advantage, it's IP oriented, and so. Now we realize that the more the innovation is open, the better is for organization, enterprises, and society overall. That I agree with you. Last, I think, Avinash, very quickly, see, how we measure the success is also changing, right? Suddenly we are looking at WhatsApp banking. Tomorrow we are looking at metaverse coming in. NFT is already, skyrocketing both ways, upwards and downwards, actually, right? The Bitcoins, if you see, tomorrow it is, 100% jump, and day after tomorrow it is in 99%, down that way. But things are changing. But the KPIs of measurement of success is also changing. Okay. So Avinash, what are the 2 or 3 KPIs you think is importantly to be incorporated in measurement of success?
See, there is one KPI which will not change. And that particular KPI is in terms of, how relevant is your offering to the customer. Right?
Got it.
The way to look out at, all these technology innovations, which is happening, day in and day out, it used to happen even previously. I think the pace has sort of increased.
Yeah,
is the fact that, all these are enablers, right? For people like me, this is like, a new toy every time I sort of, go to the shop. And of course, for people like Marshall, I'm fairly certain, it's like a toy as well as, an opportunity to sort of, monetize and sort of,
right,
serve back to the community. But if we pivot the entire framework around, how do we reach out to the customer? How do we improve the experiences of the customer?
Yeah.
And probably even of people who are not our customers at this particular point of time, right?
True.
I think the choices sort of lay out by themselves. If we may have to reduce the unit economics of sort of, reaching out to the last segment out there. As a bank, Axis is also now, very, very focused in terms of what we call as the Bharat segment.
Got it.
Okay. Now we have to sort of, make choices in terms of, which technology are we going to be investing in terms of, using scale, in terms of, deploying things faster. It could be cloud, it could be containerization, it could be SaaS platforms. A lot of these choices are something, which we end up making, day in and day out. Okay. But from a KPI perspective, I think the customer KPI remains absolutely important. The second important KPI over there is that, okay, your unit economics needs to sort of, keep coming down. It really cannot, turn in the opposite direction. And that is something which we try to work very closely with the software providers. We try to work very closely with the OEMs, because something, which is looking very attractive in the West may not necessarily make the same economic sense, when it comes to India, right?
True.
And as some of the big players have found out, right? I mean, the Indian breaking through in terms of, payback on the Indian economic model can sometimes, have a long gestation period.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Last and very important as a KPI, is the entire thing around resilience. And when I use the thing resilience, I'm using it a little loosely. It includes security, it includes monitoring, be it from a fraud monitoring perspective or a risk monitoring perspective. It includes resilience. It actually includes, controlling outages. Because how do we become more and more predictable?
True.
From a customer standpoint, I think that is what we look at, most. And forget about technology, right? I mean, even 50 years ago, when a person used to wake up in the morning and he used to basically believe that, okay, I need to go and get, some stuff for home. The predictability was the fact that, okay, I've got a grocery store right next door, right? That has now got transformed in terms of the fact that, okay, I mean, I have financial services on, in my pocket. My
True.
mobile phone is not holding it. Okay. Or maybe I'm able to do a lot of my transactions now using my Alexa or my Google Home or something of that nature.
True.
So the metrics has actually moved in these directions, especially from a technology standpoint. But otherwise, the fact of the matter remains that, okay, balance sheet still stays equally important. Customer obsession still remains equally important, right?
True.
So these are only different colors. I think the end goal remains the same.
Thanks. No, thank you, Avinash. I think fair. I accept your viewpoint there. That the basic fundamentals remains the same, but the flavors have changed. I mean, ice cream flavors have become more and more diversified. I think that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
I'm going to very briefly, Marshal, time is also short there. While you are servicing customers, earlier, expectations were different, right? You will come and do a technology KPIs with them. But today, customers are expecting a business KPI with you guys. Okay. How are you contributing to my business KPI? And largely the business KPIs would revolve around two things. One tangent is, is there a revenue or a customer experience impact? Or is there a productivity efficiency impact, which I'm looking at it? There has to be sort of an EBITDA game played or a revenue game played. There are two levels of thinking. And those are the critical board members discussion, right? And today, partners such as yourself is expected to contribute to that, build that relationship with the community. Is that happening at your end? How do you play that important role?
Yeah, it is to some extent, right? I mean, it is happening lot more with our SI partners who offer complete solution, and they are playing into it. But even as a technology company, it's happening. For example, we were the first to get subscription model, right? But that has now, everything has moved to cloud. Okay, so it is as a service model, which is very rampant now. So I think and we are available on all forms, right? All cloud providers,
Sure.
Public cloud providers, some Indian cloud providers, etc. So that's a big change. The second change is also, the way the products are built in, right? Many times, Avinash spoke a lot about focusing on what client wants and satisfying their needs, and huge focus on customer. But sometimes you also want to anticipate, when we are building products, what client would need in future. For example, containerization. While everything else was focused around virtualization, I think we went into a next wave. So as we build products, we have to look ahead. Some of the needs may not be very evident now, but how do you build those? So that's also unique. So in terms of consumption models, those have changed to cloud consumptions. And the second thing is anticipating needs and building future products, right? So those are the two unique things I would say.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you, Marshal. No, I agree. I think the needle has shifted from purely technology KPI to augmenting business KPIs as well. I think as providers, as buyers as well, both have realized that juncture has come. As part of our discussion, three things have come out. One, the pace to leadership is reality. I think the level playing field caused by a low barrier of digital, fintechs coming in and the large players all playing an important transformation role, the race to leadership is the question which is to be answered now at a board level, at a CEO level, business level, and technology level, because technology is playing a very important role. I think the second part which came out very clearly in our discussion is it's not a simple blueprint. It's not an exercise which a consultant can come and, throw 5 documents to you and it is solved. You need to take conscious decisions and evolve yourself. That's what Avinash was referring. That, every day there is sort of a ball, a toy comes to him and he has to decide whether he want to scale it or not scale it and what its market is making sense or not. So second pillar is there. I think the third pillar is about intersection of technology, industry and process. Because, if the intersection of technology and industry will create platforms which need to be adopted to be a relevant player in the market, and intersection of process and technology will actually give you innovation. Until the technology actually intervene into a process, there is no innovation, there is no business value. We can all talk about in air, but nothing will happen until it intervenes at the process level. And that's the business value. But when these two are intersecting, then process and industry has to intersect, which will create templates. And going forward, that will change the industry operating model as well. And that's how we keep on. So that's the third pillar which we discussed, because you never realized, both of you have said the same thing. Hey guys, we are decomposing to create new business value, but I really need configuration, templates. I don't need to do customization. So I think we are creating a new industry template. Now, the only thing which I will leave with you guys as well as with my audience is, as far as keep it technology invisible, and if you think technology is completely invisible, pat yourself. That's the litmus test. I always use it. In my organization, I always say any process, any business we are doing, if my customer can feel the technology, then I think we are not doing a good job.
Yeah.
But if the customers don't feel the technology and it's seamless, then I think pat yourself, you're doing a great job. Keep on doing it. And I think that's the message I'll leave it with this ending and closure. But it's always an honor, Avinash, to have you. It's always an honor, Marshal, to have you today on the platform. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Shalil. Looking forward to it.
Same here, Avinash. Thank you. Thank you, Marshal. Thank you, guys.